Before we begin today's frolics, I would like to make a special dedication. Dedicating this episode to the memory of an ex-coworker and a friend of mine, a fellow Chowchillian. She's from Chowchilla, California, such as myself. Her name is Dolores Perini. She passed away on August the 18th, 2015. She was one of my coworkers at the IRS. She was a lead. She was one of my instructors. She believed in me. She kept pressing me on to become a lead myself, and an instructor and a manager. And she was a great woman, had a heart of gold. Again, she's been sick for a while, and she recently retired due to her illness, and due to everything, she passed away on the 18th. Again, Dolores, you are missed by everyone that knows you, everyone at the IRS. We all miss you. We love you. While we do miss and we will miss you, we are happy that you're out of your pain and you're in a better place, wherever that might be. Anyways, enough of that. Let's get on with today's show.
Aw, yeah. Feels good.
Hello, greetings and hi there. This is the Head Speaks podcast, a proud member of the Headcast family. I am your host, Aaron Moss, also known as Brother Head. Welcome to Head Speaks, where I'll be talking about comics, movies, and recent news items that interest me. Basically anything that strikes my fancy.
Warning! Warning!
This podcast may not be family friendly. Head Speaks may contain adult language, adult content, fantasy violence, and nudity. You have been warned. The young, stupid, and easily offended may not want to listen to this headcast. In other words, parental guidance is more than suggested. Now, before we get started today, let's hear a word from a friend of the show.
We'll return after these messages.
This is an imaginary podcast, which may never have happened.
The Shortbox Showcase.
But then again may have. About a father and daughter. I'm Professor Allen.
And I'm Emily.
Who came from Ohio and talked about comics.
Walking Dead.
Tintin.
Black Lightning.
White Tiger. It tells of their rise to glory, when the great guests were yet to be booked.
Let's put it this way, Shogun Warriors wasn't going to win any Eisners.
And the great feats of editing not yet performed.
This is Ultra 7, this is Ultraman Jack, and this Ultraman Taro, and this Ultraman Leo, and this
of how they spoke at length.
Continuity is really the brainchild of nitpicking nerds the world over.
But to be fair, the best kind of confession is the Force confession.
And reviewed in brief tales that explore creatively the bounds of a given character's history.
Red Sun is wonderful with a very strange ending.
Of brilliant creators before their fall from grace. This is the era where Miller is at the height of his creative and artistic powers, and the ability of strong writing to encapsulate and transcend its time.
Flash of Two Earths by Gardner Fox.
This is an imaginary podcast. Aren't they all? Shortbox Showcase is part of the Relatively Geeky family of podcasts. Check us out on the web at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search in iTunes for Relatively Geeky or Shortbox Showcase. And remember, we're not experts.
We're just family.
Trekker Talk, a fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the pages of Trekker Comics by creator, writer, and artist Ron Randall. I'm Darren.
And I'm Ruth. We'll be discussing the stories, characters, and art in this excellent retro sci-fi adventure series, as well as having side conversations about other areas of fandom.
We hope you'll join us as we travel from the dangerous back streets of New Galuf to the depths of outer space and everywhere in between.
Trekker Talk is available at podbean.com and on iTunes and Stitcher.
Today, a little about the promos I played. I've been playing random promos from a folder that a buddy of mine, the Irredeemable Shag, has set up. I've pulled these two out because, well, both Shortbox Showcase and Trekker Talk have recently played my Task Force X promo on their shows, so I'm showing a little love and kindness and respect back, and I'm playing their promos across my Headcast network. So, thanks you guys for playing my promos. There was yours, and they'll show up again. Anyways, enough of that. Before we get going today, let me just let you know a little something. Today's episode may sound a little different. I'm using my son's Turtle Beach headset to record today's episode instead of my usual, I think it's a Microsoft $20 Walmart special headset. So the sound quality may sound a little different, probably better. I may start using this in the future if my son lets me, until I get my own better headset. But let me know what you think about the quality of today's festivities. But anyways, let's go ahead and get on with today's show. The 14th episode of Head Speaks. Well, I can't believe we made it this far. Baby bobbity boo. I don't know. Let's go ahead and start today's first segment. Hold on tight, kids. Here is...
Oh, yeah.
A Little Head.
On this episode of A Little Head, we continue our multi-part subject talk of my family. This episode, we're going to talk a little bit about my son, Stephen Aaron Moss. Stephen is my second born. He was born December the 10th, 1993. If you listened last month, my oldest son, Tim, was born January the 24th, 1993. You notice I cut it kind of close there. The doctor said wait 6 weeks. By God, I waited 6 weeks. And then, well, apparently I'm more fertile than I thought I was. Anyways, Stephen Aaron was conceived. At the time, I was working at Target. Me and my cousin was ride-sharing cars, going back and forth together because we both worked at Target. And on the way back one day, before we found out what Stephen was going to be, he's like, "So, cuz, what do you want, a boy or a girl?" I'm like, I've got Tim, I got my little boy. I wouldn't mind having a girl, have one of each. He looks at me and he's like, "You idiot, they're not collectibles. You don't collect one of each, put them on your shelf. They're kids." I'm like, I still want one of each, cuz, That was kind of funny. But anyway, so Stephen was born. Again, this pregnancy wasn't as bad as our previous one. Again, I'd mentioned the problems Renee had carrying Tim. We knew there might be problems, so we took this one a little more seriously. She took this one a little more easily. And this one wasn't quite as bad. She went for one of her checkups like 2 weeks before Steve's due date. I was working at Target at the time. I was actually at work. And my mom had took her to the doctor for me. And I got a phone call at work saying, hey, they're going to have to do another C-section. Not quite the emergency, but they are going to pull him out now because her blood pressure's kind of off. And so instead of waiting, they're going to do the C-section today. So I got off work, ran over, and I was actually there for Stephen being born. I watched the doctor pull Stephen out of her, and it was a joyous occasion. And actually, I saw 3 of my 4 kids being born. And again, I talked about last episode about Tim, so... But anyway, so Stephen Moss, he was born, I don't know what time it was, like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe 11 o'clock, on December the 10th of 1993. Again, he had a pretty good life. I mean, an exceptional life. He lived with me and his mom and his brother for the first few years. And we lived in a couple different little apartments there in Chowchilla. Again, rather unexceptional for the first couple years. And then in 1995, my grandfather passed away. And so me and the wife and the boys moved in to my grandmother's house to help my uncle with my grandmother, because she had been sick for several years, bedridden. They always thought we were going to lose her first, but we ended up losing my grandfather, which is for a different story. So we moved in and we lived there for a couple of months. And things weren't perfect for the last year or two with me and Renee. We had our arguments, fights. She had a problem with lying, not telling the truth. She would take money out of the bank without telling me. We'd be overdrawn all the time because she was doing crap like that. I would get upset with her. But I tried to make a go of it because that's who I am. And one day, she was going to school at Merced College, and I was working at a recyclable place there in Chowchilla. And it was a Friday, if not mistaken. School was out for some holiday or something. I forget what it was. So I took the car to work. And when I got off work, I got home, and I had found out that she tried leaving. Well, she did leave. She left to try taking the boys. Luckily, at the time, again, she was watching my grandmother for us because my grandmother was bedridden, needed help all the time. My uncle was out doing something. Melvin was out, my uncle, and I was at work. She took the boys and took off. Well, my grandmother called my uncle up where we was at and told him, hey, Renee's taking off with the boys. So my uncle headed home, and he caught her down the road, and she said, well, you can leave if you want, but the boys are staying here with Aaron. So he brought the boys back home, and I got home from work and found all this out. Again, I'm not going to get into that whole situation there at this point, but Renee left. We ended up getting divorced. I had full custody of both the boys. She came down once or twice to see the boys. And first time she came down, Steve almost didn't recognize her. I think it was Steven. As a baby, nothing I forgot to say. I think I forgot to say it last time also. With Tim, she was very hands-off. He was a preemie. She was a first-time mom. She was very nervous, didn't know what she was doing, so she didn't really do a whole lot with Tim. Steve, on the other hand, she held all the time. She babied him. She, was always holding him. So she sleep holding him a lot of times. So he was very dependent on his mother at the time. When she left, it kind of left a little bit of a void in his life. I mean, he had his uncle, his grandma, his great-grandma all there helping me out, but he missed that mother. Even though my mom, I love her to death, she did a great job helping with him. And I know my grandmother loved her grandkids. There's still that bond between a mother and a son that was severed. So Steve was very clingy, very neat, if you will. I know one time when a year or so later, we were at the one of the local water parks, and he was always going up all the female lifeguards. Hey, watch me do this. Watch me do this. Any females he was very clingy towards and very neat, if you will. He's still kind of that way today. Not as bad, but he's still. I mean, he's luckily the last 10 years he's had Michelle around, my current wife, and his mother helping out. And again, she loves the boys like they're her own, so that's helped out quite a bit. But from the time she left, like I say, she came down twice and saw him within the first 6 months or so, and then she's vanished. She would call him a couple of times, and then that stopped in 98 when I started working at PSNW, actually. So she was out of their life until, like I say, from 98, and then here just a couple of years ago, she got a hold of Tim via Facebook. I gave Steve that information. Well, here's your real mom's information. If you want to contact her, go for it. Previous to that, like a year or so before that, I set them down. I figured they were old enough. I told her, what happened to me and their mom. Because previously, being the hell of a guy I am, I tried to keep, the dirty water and what I thought about their mom away from the boys. But I sat down and told them, what she did. Supposedly, from what I heard, she's been in jail a couple of times since then. But if you guys want to look for me and your mom, Michelle will help you look for your real mom. If you want to at some point, let me know, or whatever you need to do. So then, about a year later or so, she got a hold of Tim. I gave the information to Steve, and Steve contacted her, and they started talking again after 15 years. And she would tell him, well, no, your dad told you all these lies. I wasn't that bad. I never went to jail. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. Your dad wouldn't let me see you. This and that, and all these other lies. And, he told me a little bit about it. I'm like, well, you know me. talk to your Uncle Dean, which is my best friend Dean Cole. He'll tell you the truth. And Dean's saying, well, your dad wouldn't do that. Your dad. Your dad's a good guy. And then recently, Steve's found out that his mom, his real mom, Renee, she went back to jail. Her current husband told Steve, well, yeah, no, she's a liar. She's, been to jail a couple of times. She's been stealing money from my business. I'm going to divorce her because she's, just a bad woman. So he's found out that he started getting close to his real mom again. And that was that bond that was severed, was being reformed. But then she went and severed again by lying and not being an all-around nice person, which kind of hurts Steve, and it makes him hard to trust. Makes it hard for Steve to trust people. So, but he's healing from that. I'm doing the best I can to help him, but I wish the best for my son. Steve, he graduated from high school. A good kid, smart kid. Back when he was a senior, I think I mentioned last episode about his brother getting mad at me, taking off. He talked his brother, Steve, into going with him, so they both left. Steve lived in Chowchilla, graduated from Chowchilla Union High School, same place I did. Was living there. It was kind of rough, He was living with my uncle. Wasn't working. My uncle didn't make him do anything. He was hanging out with my best friend Dean. Didn't make him do anything. So didn't have any money. Was always eating hamburgers and not much else. Didn't really have money to do anything. Then he started talking to me about, he realized there was his ways, and he apologized and he wanted to come back home because he basically realized that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So Steve moved back home. Maybe it was a year later. I forget exactly now. But he's been at home. He's had a couple of girlfriends. Had one girlfriend back in high school. It was a secret girlfriend. Her parents didn't want her dating. Being a family of clowns, he was afraid to tell us about her, so the girl's dad found out. And that's how I found out, was because her dad called me up, hey, your son's kissing on my girl. Well, your girl's wanting him, so, don't be giving me crap. I was polite to the guy. But, yeah, there was some friction there. They ended up breaking up because her dad didn't want her dating until she was older, and teenagers being teenagers, they tried going around him. Some of her friends ratted her out and told her dad about it, apparently. He got upset, threatened to call the cops. I told Steve, you know what? You need to back off, son. If the cops get involved, it can get ugly. So they ended up breaking up. He dated a couple of other girls that weren't very good. I'm not going to go into details about his love life other than that. Currently, he's dating a new girl named Lily. She seems like a really sweet girl. She's working. She's working like 2 jobs. She knows what she wants to do. She's going to school. She's got a good head on her shoulders. Hopefully, he doesn't screw it up because he does. He is a bit like his dad. So, hope he doesn't screw it up and he treats her right and he make this work because Lily's a great girl. And again, my son, he's a great guy. He's gonna make a great husband one of these days. But that's all I got to say about Steve. I mean, he's a great kid. He helps out around the house. He's working currently at Denny's here in Sanger. He's looking for something better. He's working swing. He started out as a busboy. He went to dishwasher. Now he's a host. He's serving, or not serving. He's waiter. That's what they're called. I'm a fat man. I should know about this. He's serving them people food and stuff. So they're server. That's what they're called, Aaron. Okay. Anyways. So that's Stephen Aaron Moss, my second born. Love you, son. By the way, let me know if you guys are liking these segments of my show. Whether you like to hear more about my kids like I'm doing and my family, or if these are boring the shit out of you. If you don't let me know, I don't know. All right? Thanks, guys. But that's enough about Stephen today. Let's move on with more of my show.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you want to hear the origin of Superman or Batman? Of course not. You're listening to a Geek Culture podcast. You know the origins of Superman and Batman. You've always known them. Your unborn grandchildren know the origins of Superman and Batman. But what about Guy Gardner, Blue Beetle or the Phantom Stranger? What about Firestorm, Sandman, or the Golden Age Fury? Those are just a few of the stories covered in the Secret Origins podcast, a review show dedicated to the Secret Origins comic published by DC in the 1980s. Each episode of the Secret Origins podcast features me, Ryan Daly, and an all-star collection of guest hosts revealing or revisiting the legends of the DC superheroes and villains. And if you're already sick of hearing my voice on this promo, the good news is at least 50% of the talking on the Secret Origins podcast is done by a terrific guest from the podcast and blogging community. So check out the Secret Origins podcast, available on iTunes and at secretoriginspodcast.wordpress.com.
Yo, Joe! We'll fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there. G.I. Joe, real American hero. G.I. Joe is there. It's G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro, fighting to save the day. He never gives up. He's always there, fighting for freedom over land and air. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there.
Attention, Joes. This is General Hawk. I have an important mission for you. I need you to listen to G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. It's a monthly podcast where Aaron Moss, codename Head, and two other Joes, Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, will be reporting on the comic book G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. Previously published by Marvel, currently being published by IDW Comics. We'll also cover the special missions, the yearbooks, order battles, etc. To hear their message, report to GIJoe.headspeaks.com or iTunes or Stitcher Radio. You can get further information at Facebook, Google+, and Twitter, all under G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. Dismissed.
Now we know!
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, is a proud member of the Headcast family.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe.
Now let's take a look.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Long Box?
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind. The world's greatest super friends.
This month on What's in Head's Long Box, we're going to talk about a special comic book series. It's from DC Comics. The reason I'm doing it this month is because, well, this year is the 30th anniversary of the event. For those that know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. For those that don't, I guess I'll tell you. Back in April of 1985, that's the publication date, DC presented a little story, a 12-part maxi series called The Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was a wide-line crossover, which, before I get into that, let's take a step back and talk a little more about DC Comics before that. DC Comics originally started with, back in the 30s and 40s, 50s, they had your Superman and Batman, Flash, which was Jay Garrick, Green Lantern, which was Alan Scott, Wonder Woman, Spectre, Dr. Fate, Wildcat, all these various heroes. You had teams like the Justice Society of America and so forth. They fought in World War II as much as they could. It was a great series of comics, a great day. Eventually, it was known as the Golden Age of Comics. Then in the 50s, you had asshats like Dr. Frederick Wortham saying how comics are bad for kids, and it was basically bringing about the downfall of the American comic book industry. In fact, take a listen to this.
The real question is this: are comic books good or are they not good? If you want to raise a generation that is half stormtroopers and half cannon fodder with a dash of illiteracy, then comic books are good. In fact, they are perfect. Just a very short while ago, an 11-year-old boy committed a holdup in California and killed a woman of 42. And when the police came to arrest this 11-year-old boy, his older brother, who's 20, said, if you want to know the cause of all this, here it is. It's these rotten comic books. Cut them out, and things like this would not happen.
It is my opinion, without any reasonable doubt and without any reservation, that comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile delinquency.
Yeah, kids are acting up, so let's blame comics. Thank you, Dr. Wortham, you worthless dick. But this is not here. I'm not here to pet down the man, or I'm not here to really discuss that era of comics. I'm just highlighting this little point to point out that DC Comics kind of stopped doing superhero comics. They went for more like romance, Western comics, things like that for a few years. And then in the late 50s, they decided to bring back the superhero comic. In doing so, they didn't want to bring back exactly what they had before. So I believe it was Julius Schwartz got the idea to kind of reinvent some of them. One of the first ones to be brought back was The Flash. But instead of bringing back Jay Garrick as The Flash, Robert Kanigher and penciler Carmine Infantino reinvented him. They gave him a new identity. They gave him the name of Barry Allen. He has a different costume, different origin. Everything's different about him. And he first showed up in Showcase number 4 in October 1956. In fact, he used to read, as a kid, comics of the Golden Age Flash, and that's where he drew inspiration from to become a superhero when he got his powers. And from there, then they brought out Green Lantern, again with a different name, different origin, different costume, totally different character, just the same superhero name. And they kept bringing back more and more characters. They brought Batman and Superman back into the foray, using the same origin, same background. And this went along fine for a few years. And then in issue, I think it was 123 of The Flash, they decided, you know what, it'd be kind of interesting if we have the the new Flash, Barry Allen, meet the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick. So they had them two meet in a crossover that's become known as The Flash of Two Worlds. A great cover. It shows on a wall down the middle of the page. On one side you have Barry, the other side you have Jay, both running to help this construction worker that's laying on the ground about to be crushed, saying, help me. And they're both, I'm on the way. After that point, they decided, you know what, let's bring back and tell some more stories of these Golden Age characters. But Barry read about Flash, Jay Garrick in a comic. How can that be? I know. The Golden Age characters, Jay Garrick, Alan Scott, and all these characters are comics, yes, but they're comics that the writers tapped into an alternate Earth. We're going to put Jay and all these characters on Earth 2, while Barry and all the modern day counterparts are on Earth 1. And the writers of Earth 1, when they sleep, they tap into some sort of neural network, and they see what's happening on Earth 2, and that's what allows them to write the stories that Barry read as a kid. Interesting concept. And basically, whenever they would have a discrepancy, they'd mess up on something sometimes. They would say, oh, well, that happened on a different Earth. That, or they'd acquire characters from another comic company, like Charlton Heroes, or the Shazam characters. They'd bring them in, they'd put them on different Earths, so you'd have a bunch of different Earths. This went along until 1985. I believe it was Marv Wolfman, if I'm not mistaken, had the mistaken impression, okay, I'm saying a mistaken impression, it's up for debate, that having all these different Earths was confusing for readers. Again, at the time, as I've said previously, I didn't get in comics till later, as far as reading comics. In 86, I got a big old box of comics that I went through. They had mostly post-crisis, mostly pre-crisis, a few post-crisis stories. Pre-crisis is anything that happened before the Crisis on Infinite Earths, just so you know. And I wasn't really that confused by it. And from everyone I've heard from several podcasters talking about this, no other readers, from what I've heard, really seem to be confused about this matter. But Marv Wolfman thought that, again, Marv Wolfman thought that having all these Earths were confusing, causing problems. So they wanted to streamline things down into one universe, basically. Before I go any further, there will be spoilers for a 30-year-old story. If you haven't read Crisis, stop what you're doing. Stop, collaborate, and listen. Ice is back with a brand new invention. So anyways, stop and go read The Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's a 12-part series that crossed over with almost every DC comic, it seemed, at the time. But we'll get into that. I'm going to go and give you a few minutes. Go ahead and read. All right, you back? Good. So you've read The Crisis on Infinite Earths. Great comic. Now let's go and talk about it. Crisis on Infinite Earths. A little more... Sorry, I'm going to backtrack just another second here. I talked about the Flash, meeting the old Flash. They would also have team-up stories. It'd be like a once-a-year thing for a while of the Justice League, which is our modern-day group of superheroes, meeting up with the Justice Society, which I said briefly earlier is the Golden Age superhero group. They'd meet up, and then they'd meet other heroes from other universes. They were stories called Crisis on Earth 2, Crisis on Earth 3, and so forth. And these were like yearly, annual events that the teams would cross over for a couple issues. Great times, I thought, from what I've read some of these in back issues or trade paperbacks. Like I say, Earth 2 was the Golden Age heroes. Earth 3 was an Earth where all the heroes on there were actually villains. Superman was a character called Ultraman. Superwoman? Wonder Woman was a character called Wonder Woman. Try that again. Wonder Woman was a character called Superwoman. Batman was Owlman. And so forth and so on. So there you have Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3, Earth blah, 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 blah. All these different Earths. Marv Wolfman came along, again from what I've heard, and says, you know what, this is kind of confusing. People are confused by it. Let's streamline this into one Earth. Thus was born Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was written by the masterful, wonderful Marv Wolfman and illustrated by the magnificent and super George Titans Perez. It was also had some inking and embellishing done by Mike DiCarlo, Dick Giordano, and Jerry the Extraordinary Ordway. Again, I'm pulling a lot of this information from my own memory, from things I've heard on other podcasts, and from the Wikipedia on Crisis on Infinite Earths. If anything's wrong, don't blame me. But no, if you hear anything I say wrong, or if you want to talk about this, definitely write in and let me know. You can write into head@headspeaks.com. But what are you writing in about? Well, the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So the story starts out with this character called the Monitor. He'd been showing up in the background, supplying weapons to the villains, kind of a mysterious character. No one knew what was going on with him. He finally shows up in this crossover, in this Crisis issue, with Assistant Harbinger. The Monitor is gathering heroes from Earth for a battle he's waging with his duplicate, his counterpart called the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor is this big man Jojo, who is trying to wipe out all the other Earths, not all the others, but all Earths, and absorb their energy. He's from the antimatter universe. So he's destroying all these worlds. One of the first ones we see vanish is the aforementioned Earth 3, where all the heroes are villains. Yeah. The only hero in that world is Alexander Luthor, who's married to Lois Lane of that world. And they have a son, Alexander Luthor Jr., I believe it is. This white wave of antimatter energy is washing over the Earth, destroying it. Luthor takes the little young Alexander, pets him in a spaceship, and sends young boy off into another realm, another dimension, to try to get him saved. And Alexander's world is destroyed. Absorb, no more whiteness. Nothing there, sorry. Meanwhile, Alexander Jr.'s ship is picked up by, I believe Alexander himself. Try this again. The Monitor sends Harbinger, his assistant, out to rescue young Alexander and brings him into the ship. Their orbiting space satellite, if you will. So meanwhile, the Monitor has the Earth's heroes that he's gathered from across different Earths and time out defending these towers he's made. We don't know what they're for. We don't know what's going on. But they're fighting the Anti-Monitor's forces, which is made up of creatures called shadow demons. Some heroes die. Some get back to their own time. And again, I'm not going to go all the details on each issue of this. I'm just going to touch the highlights. Right previous to the Crisis, there was the Flash comic book series. And the Flash ended issue 350. And in that issue, he finds out that his previously murdered wife, Iris Allen, was actually sent to the future where she was originally from. It gets a little complicated there. I'm not going to go into details on this storyline right now. But suffice to say, he found out that his wife is still alive in the future, so he went to the 30th century where she was at to live with her. I say that to say this. During the first few issues of the Crisis, the Flash appears to different people. He appears to Batman and the Joker. I believe he appears to the Teen Titans. And every time we see him, he's a little more decayed, a little more decomposed. Like he's vanishing. We come to find out that the Anti-Monitor has captured Barry Allen because he thinks Barry Allen's one of the few people that could stop him. So he's got Barry Allen captured. The Monitor has heroes gathered together to protect his device. And the Anti-Monitor is going through destroying worlds, consuming them. Meanwhile, unknowns to our heroes, though I think maybe the Monitor knew about it, Harbinger at some point was possessed by one of the Anti-Monitor's shadow demons. Being possessed because Harbinger's powers, one of them is to duplicate herself into many other versions. I think she could create up to 20 duplicates, if I'm not mistaken. One of these duplicates was infected with the shadow demon. When they merged, he was able to kind of control her a bit, and he caused her to kill the Monitor. Unknowing to the Anti-Monitor, this was part of the Monitor's plan. He used his death in those devices I referred to earlier that the heroes were protecting. There was only 5 Earths left at this point. Earth 1, Earth 2, possibly Earth X. I forget which other ones offhand. Let me see here. According to Wikipedia, it was Earth 1 and 2, Earth 4, Earth S, and Earth X. Earth 4 was the Charlton heroes, Earth S was Shazam, and Earth X was the Freedom Fighters, where they fought in, I believe, the Germans, or whatever, won World War II, and they were fighting a modern-day fight against them. Those are the 5 Earths that were left, and they all had these poles on them. The Monitor died, and it released enough energy to pull all 5 of these worlds into a limbo to protect them from the Anti-Monitor. During the storyline, again, the Anti-Monitor is finally slowly working on trying to destroy these other 5 Earths. And so fighting Supergirl of Earth 1, Kara Zor-El, the one we all know and love, dies fighting the Anti-Monitor. Also, during the storyline, the Flash escapes from where he was being held, and one of the weapons the Anti-Monitor has is a tachyon device, which the Anti-Monitor fires at Earth, or one of the Earths, I think it was Earth 1, to save it. Barry tries to stop it, so he runs after the tachyon particle. Again, tachyon, it's faster than light, it's a timed device. He runs so fast that he basically goes through his life and he disintegrates. He's able to stop it, but he disintegrates himself trying to stop it. And that's where we saw him previously in the other issues where he was appearing to other heroes and villains. It was the Flash blinking out of reality as he was chasing after this tachyon particle as he was slowly deteriorating. It was a great, great scene. It was a great death for a great hero. But Barry Allen died, saving the Earths. Also, during the course of the storyline, we find out how the multiple Earths are created. Apparently, Oa is where the Guardians of the Universe, the guys who power and or the bosses of the Green Lantern Corps, basically. Back in the olden days, a Guardian or an Oan named Krona was trying to view back and look at the origins of the universe, how the universe is created. Everyone said, no, don't, stop, don't do this, it's a bad idea, you're not supposed to do this. He's like, screw you guys, I'm going to do it. When he does, he sees this giant hand creating the universe, and something happens. I don't remember the exact details now, but when he pulls back and he's watching this happen, there's a massive explosion, and that creates the multiverse. Meanwhile, the Anti-Monitor is going to use Krona's technology to help him destroy the other 5 Earths. Some of the villains, because they realize that if the Earth dies, they die too, they are sent back in the past to try to stop Krona from creating the technology. They fail. Krona continues to experiment. Meanwhile, Alexander Luthor Jr., he's grown up quickly. In a matter of days or months, or not months, but a matter of days, he goes from a baby to a young adult. And he's got the power to open up portals between the positive and antimatter universes. So the Anti-Monitor uses Alex Luthor when he opens one of these portals to capture a lot of the heroes. Meanwhile, the Spectre, who's supported by Earth's magical-powered heroes in the positive universe, battles the Anti-Monitor, creating an energy overload which shatters space and time. Once that's done, a single universe is created, and the superheroes that were part of this adventure that were in the past return to our present, which is all 5 Earths merged into one. Only those present at the dawn of time remembered the original reality in the different Earths. Meanwhile, the Anti-Monitor's not dead. He's a giant creature now. He attacks again, pulling Earth to the antimatter universe and having Shadow Demons attack. He's counterattacked, reattacked, whatever, by Kal-El, which that's Kal-L, the Earth 2 Superman, Alexander Luthor of Earth 3, and Superboy of a reality called Earth Prime. In the final battle, the Anti-Monitor, reduced to a flaming head, crashes into a star and dies, ending the threat, leaving one Earth. And on this Earth, Alexander Luthor's here. There's 2 Supermen, the Earth 1 primary Superman and the Earth 2 Superman. Superboy from Earth Prime is here. And most of the heroes were stitched back into reality. Timeline was created as one seamless timeline, if you will. Again, Alexander, Luthor, Superman, Earth 2, Superboy Prime, they were at the dawn of time. They were fighting the Anti-Monitor. So when reality was stitched back together, they were not created a place in it, if you will. So Superman 2, if you will, is very despondent because his wife, Lois Lane, is dead. His world's dead. He's got no reality here. Clark Kent here is a young I believe he was working for GBS TV at the time. He's like, well, I have no place here. What am I going to do? Again, Superboy Prime, a young Clark Kent. Again, no place in this world. There's an older Clark Kent for him here. What are we going to do? Alex says, well, you know what? All is not lost. He opens up a portal into himself again, and out steps Lois Lane of Earth 2. The Golden Age Lois Lane, who is married to Superman. He's like, well, all is not lost, guys. I can open up a world to a paradise where we can live happily the rest of our lives. So, Golden Age Superman, Golden Age Lois Lane, and Superboy Prime all walk through the portal. Alexander joins them, and they disappear into paradise. Never, ever, 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 ever to be seen again, as long as you ignore Infinite Crisis. That's another story for another podcast. But anyways, that's the primary focus of Crisis on Infinite Earths. As I said, it tied into a lot of different comics. I could read off the list, but there's a lot of them on here. If you want, you can go to the Wikipedia for Crisis on Infinite Earths, take a look at all the different crossover you're interested. Now, in the current post-Crisis continuity, as far as everyone knows, because again, there was only one Earth now, they still think that there was this Anti-Monitor, there was Red Skies, he was just trying to destroy the Earth, and the heroes saved him. They don't know about everything else, and a lot of the people that died. During the storyline, there were several new characters introduced that went on to continue afterwards. There was a Monitor assistant, Harbinger, as I said. There was a scientist called Pariah, who I kind of skipped over in the main story I talked about. He was trying to view the beginning of time also. There was an explosion, and he was cursed, if you will. He couldn't die. And he was somewhat tied into the Anti-Monitor's plan where wherever Earths are going to be destroyed, he would appear first as a pariah, if you will, announcing the world's death. So right before the white wave nothingness appeared, Harbinger, Pariah would appear and see the worlds die after death. He was a bit of a whiny little bitch. That's kind of why I skipped him. Anyways, another character called Lady Quark was introduced. She was a survivor of one of the destroyed worlds. A new Dr. Light, a female superhero, was introduced. Former Charlton characters were introduced. Most notably, Blue Beetle II showed up. Ted Cord, who, if I haven't mentioned before, I think I have, is my favorite Blue Beetle. They were introduced and brought into the DC universe. After the Crisis, the former Kid Flash, Wally West, became the Flash since Barry died. Jonah Hex was a Western character. He was transported to a post-apocalyptic future and had a comic called Hex. Just Society of America had a member called Wildcat, mentioned briefly. His goddaughter, Yolanda Montez, became the new Wildcat. The Guardians of the Universe left for an unknown dimension, and the Green Lantern Corps was reorganized with Hal Jordan leading the Earth-based team. And the surviving Just Society members left for Limbo, along with Wildcat, the original Wildcat, Dead Grant. But that's the basic story of the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Again, this isn't very detailed. I just wanted to briefly mention a great comic. It's been a novel written on it, and an audiobook was done on this. It's been collected in the Crisis on Infinite Earths 1 through 12. It was published in a hardcover in 1998. A trade paperback 2001. There was the official Crisis on Infinite Earths Index. The official Crisis on Earths Crossover Index, which talked about and summarized every comic book issue that crossed over with it. And then there was the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Absolute Edition from 2005, which I kind of want to get because it's an oversized, slip-cased hardcover edition. The first volume reprinted the limited series, and the second volume included scripts, commentaries, retrospectives, and the 2 indexes. That's the Crisis briefly, as briefly as I can do a 12-issue maxi series. But I will say this, after having said that, there's this. Overall, the Crisis was a great story. Again, as I said, it had Marv Wolfman of the Teen Titans doing the writing, Jerry the Titans Perez doing fantastic artwork. With those two together, both of them working on the Titans, both of them doing a magnificent job. You've got Mike DiCarlo, Dick Giordano, who is a magnificent Superman artist back in the day, Jerry the Extraordinary Ordway, who's a fantastic artist in his own right. With these men involved, this story could not be anything but magnificent. And not like the Seven either. Some people blame the Crisis for problems with the DC continuity afterwards. I say bullshit. The Crisis didn't cause any problems. The problems came later on when DC editorial, I say later, I guess it was later. From what I understand, Marv Wolfman wanted to reboot the entire DC line after the end of Crisis. He was overturned, said, no, we don't need to do that. We've got titles. The Batman and Superman titles were in the 400s and 500s. We've got these really good titles. They're really long running. We don't want to reboot everything to number one. And people thinking that, these titles are no good because they're at a number one. Which is kind of funny because nowadays and age, both DC and Marvel's rebooting everything at the drop of a hat because they want the number one issues. Unless it suits them, then they go back to the higher numbers just for the anniversary, which kind of pisses me off to hell and high water and back. But that's another story entirely. So they didn't want to reboot everything. So instead of rebooting, they left everything where it is. DC was one universe now. Everything went along fine. And there were some minor problems here and there. Characters that were on a different Earth at one time were now all on one Earth. The Just Society, which was on Earth 2, set in DC's past, is now on Earth. They're all on one Earth. So they had to kind of fit that stuff in. They could have been fine, but the problem started up 6 months later. John Byrne, back when he was could tell a damn story to save his life, and was a good artist and good writer, what did he do? He rebooted the Superman series in a storyline called Superman Man of Steel. And that was an excellent story. The only problem with it was, I liked what he did with it, but he rebooted Superman, and he said that Superman became Superman when he was adult. There was no Superboy. He got rid of Supergirl. He got rid of the million Kryptonians that survived the destruction of Krypton. What he did was good. The only problem was that stories such as the Legion of Superheroes, they were formed because they were following in the steps of Superboy, but in post-Crisis stories, there was no Superboy now. Kind of messes up Legion. They did some workarounds. They tried to fix it the best they could on their own, but, it could have been fine at that. They did a soft reboot in the Batman titles in the early 400s. They had Year One, which kind of what you would call a soft reboot. They changed some of the details here and there, which again could be a little problematic, but by itself was fine. The major culprits, in my opinion, was Wonder Woman. I want to say that was George Perez doing Wonder Woman. And again, I don't want to say anything bad about Perez. He's a magnificent writer and artist. I don't know if it was his idea or DC, but someone said, let's set this in modern day. So Wonder Woman, who previous to this was a member of the Justice League, she had stories with all these other characters. Now all of a sudden, she didn't appear in what they call Man's World, the regular DC storylines and what have you, until Legends, which was like a year after the Crisis, which kind of messed up all of those old Justice League stories. They couldn't have taken place as happened because, there was no Wonder Woman. They've kind of did some fixes on those, but there was other problems, such as Wonder Girl was a mess up to begin with. That's in the story entirely. She was Wonder Woman's... originally, it was like a what if story if Wonder Woman was a baby or a girl. A writer didn't realize that's what it was, created Wonder Girl for the Titans, and she became like an actual character in the Teen Titans, which was good. They did some good stories with her. But now, after the rebooted Wonder Woman, again, she was Wonder Woman's sidekick. But now in the new continuity, there was no Wonder Woman until Legends. So what happens with all these? Where did Wonder Girl come from? She was a big part of the Teen Titans. You can't really wipe her out without messing up those stories. Where did she come from? DC spent, I don't know how many storylines trying to fix that. And other things similar to that. And again, that might have been salvageable if that was the extent of the changes. But nope. Hawkman. Again, another mainstay in DC continuity. Remember the Justice League. Crossed over with Superman. Him and the Atom being one of my two favorite heroes, as you may know. Back in the day, they had a series together. Anyways, big time DC character. All of a sudden, they came out with a series called Hawkworld, which kind of redid Hawkman's origin. Which again, if it was set in DC's past, it could have been fine. I mean, there would have been no problems. They could have set in the past, had him come to modern day DCU, or had him come to the DCU back in the past, no problem. But nope. Per DC's want, they set Hawkworld in present day, which means when Hawkman came to Earth in current continuity, there had already been a Hawkman around in Superman, Atom, all these Justice League, all these other stories, so they had problems there. And all these willy-nilly reboots halfway here and there, it's kind of made a mess of DC continuity. So much so that in 1994, I think it was, they had a storyline called Zero Hour, which, while in my opinion was another great story overall, there was problem. Again, Zero Hour came along, and instead of doing another wide line reboot, they did soft reboots throughout titles, had a zero issue kind of resetting up the story for everybody. But it didn't really fix everything. And like I say, for 10 years, from 85 to 94, they had problems. Even after that, they still had problems with continuity. And I'm not going to get into the whole, is continuity good or bad in this episode. That's saved for another episode. But regardless, and that eventually led to Infinite Crisis. That led to Final Crisis. These were all trying to clear up DC's continuity. And then they had the New 52 reboot in 2011. And again, instead of doing a full line reboot, they rebooted everything except for Green Lantern and Batman, because those were in the middle of some fantastic runs. They didn't want to mess those up, so they rebooted everything else except for those. And then like 6 months, a year later, they did some soft reboots in those titles. Which, again, if you would do a full reboot, that would solve a lot of your problems. But I'm getting off topic, but I'm on topic. This isn't a New 52 conversation. I'll get into that another time. This is Crisis on Infinite Earths. So Crisis itself was a great story. Again, was it needed? I don't know. You let me know what you think. Send me an email to head@headspeaks.com. Let me know whether or not that you think Crisis was needed. Personally, I don't think it really was. I think it was a good story. The follow-through was a bit of a muddle mess that caused problems decades down the road. But that's the story for Final Crisis. Or I keep saying Final Crisis. For Crisis on Infinite Earths. Did you guys like it? For more detailed information on the Crisis, and I know this probably isn't good podcasting, referring you to other podcasts, but the heck with it, I'm going to do it anyways. There is a podcast called Two True Freaks Presents Tales of the Justice Society of America. It is by Michael Bailey, and I forget his cohort's name. But I know Michael Bailey, who does the From Crisis to Crisis Superman podcast. They're talking about the old Justice Society stories and Young All-Stars and all those type of comics. But they're taking not really a break. They're interspacing it between the regular episodes. So I had to pull up on my phone here. It's Michael Bailey and Scott H. Gardner. they're having a series within their series called Tales of the Justice Society of America presents Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's going to be a 12 or so issue multi-crossover on their own thing. Not crossover, but a 12-part event, or at least 12 parts. It probably actually runs longer because you got the 12-issue series, and they're going to talk about it in more detail. They're going to talk about some of the crossovers. So it's a long event they're going to be doing. But I babbled long enough about that. Check out Scott Gardner and Michael Bailey's Tales of the Justice Society presents Crisis on Infinite Earths for further information on what I've just been talking about. They go in full details on each of the issues, give you more information on it. It's a great podcast. I'm enjoying it. So far, they're up to issue 4 of the series. But yeah, definitely check them out. But I think I babbled long enough about that. So let's go ahead and stop What's in Head's Long Box for this episode.
We'll return after these messages.
A secret governmental organization operating behind the scenes. Task Force X.
Task Force X is an off-the-books government strike team made up of convicts with no hope for release, serving as expendable agents for impossible missions. Succeed, and I'll shave time off your sentences.
If we don't?
You'll be dead. Any other stupid questions?
The Suicide Squad, ran by Amanda Waller.
I'm Amanda Waller. I'm here to indoctrinate you convicts into our special forces.
And there's Checkmate, ran by Harry Stein. This is the tales of DC Comics, Suicide Squad, and Checkmate. Mostly monthly from Headspeaks. Available on iTunes under Task Force X and under Headcasts over at headspeaks.com. We can also be found on Facebook and Google Plus under Task Force X. Task Force X. Check it out, or you'll answer to the wall.
Nobody screws the wall!
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Mike.
Man, it sure is great to be back from crisis to crisis after all this time. It's been a busy year for both of us.
For very different reasons.
But now we're ready to cover the post-Death and Return Superman stories.
Yeah, and we're about to start the books that came out in 1994, which means that we have so much to look forward to, like Bizarro's World.
The Battle for and Fall of Metropolis.
Superman Doomsday, Hunter, Prey.
Worlds Collide.
Well, you're looking forward to that one.
Oh, bite me.
0 Hour.
0 Month.
And right there at the end, we have Dead Again.
And don't forget the Elseworlds annuals as well.
Well, most of them anyway.
Yeah, some of those really did suck, don't they?
But From Crisis to Crisis is back. New episodes will drop on Thursday, just like before.
You can find the show at the Superman homepage, www.supermanhomepage.com, as well as at the Superman Podcast Network, which is at www.supermanpodcastnetwork.com.
And we also have a Facebook page that you can like by going to www.facebook.com/FromCrisisToCrisis, a Superman podcast.com. Is it .com on there? No, it's not. No .com. Forget that.
So From Crisis to Crisis is back, folks, and better than ever.
Well, I'm better than ever. You need some work.
No, shut up.
No, you 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 shut up.
From Crisis to Crisis, a Superman podcast, covering the post-crisis adventures of Superman, 1/2 month at a time. Every Thursday at www.supermanhomepage.com and www.fortressofbaileytude.com.
Mail time. The mail's here.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail.
Sometimes I wonder, well,
You've got mail.
And here we are with Talking to Ed. I was going to do Where's Head Going? But again, I kind of talked about the one of the podcasts, Tells the Just Side of America, presents Christ on Infinite Earths. That's going to be my Where Head's Going this week. I'm not going for the details on that. I've talked that one already briefly. So let's move on to Talking to Head. So over on, again, no emails from anybody. You guys don't love me. I say how it is. Over on Facebook, I did get some love. We have likes and comments from the following people: Michelle Moss, AJ Flynn, Austin Johnson, Firestorm Fan, Gene Hendricks, Rizzy Ahmed, Austin Johnson, and Eric Wilkinson Gilliard. Thanks, guys. I love you guys too. And briefly, want to mention these guys. Firestorm Fan is my buddy, the Irredeemable Shag. He's been on the show before. He's going to be on here again soon, maybe next episode. He has his podcast he does, which is the Fire and Water podcast, plus a couple of others. Definitely check them out. Also, Gene Hendricks, my buddy, he has the Hammer Strikes podcast. He's got multiple ones on there, and he's also got the Quantum Cast. The Hammer podcast basically just talks about anything geeky he wants to talk about, whatever he's in the mood for. The Quantum Cast, they talk about the Marvel superhero called Quasar. Also during the Quantum Cast, they have episodes every once in a while called Superhero Fight Club. I was on their last episode, Comic Fight Club. It was a Suicide Squad versus the A-Team. Great podcast. Go out and listen to it, guys. But I just want to mention those two, that they have their own podcast. Definitely check them out. Check them out online. But anyways, that's enough about the Facebook people. And honestly, that's it. No one's mentioned it on Google. Of course, I don't do much on Google, so I can't blame anybody. But no emails. That's all I got. So just my final thoughts for the day. Again, if you want to record a message, you can send it to me at head@headspeaks.com. Feel free to write me an email. I'll read it on the air. Go to the Facebook page, Google Plus page, leave me a message. I can't do this without you guys. Also, I want to mention that I do have my other podcasts out there. I have Head Speaks. I'm sorry. That's what you're listening to. I listen to Head Speaks. Go on. It's a good podcast. I have Task Force X, where I review John Ossinger's Suicide Squad from the 80s and Paul Kupperberg's Checkmate Comics, again from the same time era. Check that out. I think it's a wonderful podcast. And recently I've started a new one. It's called G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast. I'm doing that with Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning. I've already released the 0 episode. Coming the beginning of August. No, we're at the end of August already. Coming the beginning of September, I'll release the first episode. We've already got recorded. It's been edited down. It's ready to go. But where the first episode, me and Kyle and Ryan talk about G.I. Joe issue number 1. Check it out. Let me know what you guys think. Again, all my podcasts can be found on iTunes and Stitcher Plus, and usually at my website, headspeaks.com. Again, you can go to You can go to head.headspeaks.com to go directly to the blog for this podcast. You can go to taskforcex.headspeaks.com for the Task Force X, and gijoe.headspeaks.com for the G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast blog pages. Go there, leave a message, send me an email, go to the individual Facebook pages. This works better if you guys cooperate and write back to me, all right? Anyways, I guess that's it for this episode. Stay tuned after the credits for today's song, which is Heaven is a Place on Earth by Belinda Carlisle. It's a song from the 80s I enjoy. The reason I'm playing this one today is I've recently been listening to another podcast, which I'll briefly mention. Michael Bailey, he pops up again. Views from the Long Box. And it's a great podcast. I'll talk about it more in another episode, but recently he's played some 80 tunes, and that's one of the ones he's played. So it just made me think. I enjoyed that one. You know what? Let's go ahead and play that on my show. So here's the entire song after the credits of Heaven is a Place on Earth by Belinda Carlisle. Check it out. Write in. Let me know what you guys think. If you want to hear a specific song, maybe. If you want to hear me talk about something, write in. Let me know. All right? See you guys later. Until next month, remember, Head has spoken.
What a blast, kid. We sure had good fun while it lasted. Hung out with friends, hit the skins. Next week we're gonna do it again.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of Head Speaks. Be sure to look for me on the web. I can be found rambling on my Task Force X Headcast, where I cover all the appearances of the Ostringer Suicide Squad and Kupperberg's Checkmate comic books from the late 80s, early 90s. Both Head Speaks and Task Force X can be found on iTunes and over there on Stitcher Radio. My home on the inner tubes is my official website, headspeaks.com. HEADSPEAKS.com. Links to my blog, which contain follow-up information to this and every headcast, can be found there. I'm also over on Facebook at Head Speaks, the community, not the page. That's somebody else. On Google+, look for Head Speaks. Please feel free to email me your bitches, moans, and gripes to headspeaks@headspeaks.com. Also, feel free to email any compliments you have also. And if you want to be heard on Head Speaks, you can go ahead and record a message, and you can send it to me at headspeaks.com, and I'll play it on the air. Be sure to join us here next time for another fun-filled headcast from your friendly neighborhood brotherhead. And hey, be sure to tell a friend. Until next time, I'll see you in the funny pages.
Ooh, baby, do you know that